Did you know that some typically bad practice advice, like start at the beginning and just play through or play with the wrong rhythms, can actually be very useful if it's in the right context and you know why you're doing it?
My name is Josh Gu, and I'm taking my years of experience learning, teaching, and performing, and sharing all of my best clarinet and music tips so you can get more out of your practice, and most importantly, have fun. You can learn more about all of my many resources at quickstartclarinet.com, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit the bell to get notified when I post new videos.
If you're still watching, then I bet you're curious about how that bad practice advice can actually be good and be useful, so you didn't in fact know. However, I hope that you know that I have a free members area with tons of great free resources that you can download and get these handouts and printouts and all of this good stuff to help make your clarinet and music journey easier. You can learn more about that at quickstartclarinet.com/get started, where you can make your totally free account to get access to a nice, neatly organized platform of all of my favorite free handouts for you to check out and learn more and have an easier time on your clarinet and music journey. Now, when it comes to this typically bad practice advice, I want to unpack a few of them a little bit and kind of give you this bigger picture idea of why it can actually be a good idea to do some of those things. So let's start with the advice of just start at the beginning and play through. This is typically bad practice advice, and this is typically how a lot of us practice. We get a new piece of music and we're like, okay, cool, I'm going to play this piece, so I'll start at the beginning and I'll start playing it, and if I do something wrong, then I'll go back and fix that and kind of just keep playing my way through. Or even worse, sometimes people will get a new piece of music and say, okay, I'm going to figure out the fingerings for this. This is a little bit of a tangent, but I promise you don't need to go through and figure out the fingerings for a piece and just do the individual fingerings if you already know your chromatic scale. If you're more of a beginning player and you aren't familiar with all of the notes, then by all means go through, see what notes are unfamiliar, see what notes you don't know, figure out the fingerings, sure. But for clarinet, at least, going through and just playing the notes without the rhythm is pretty much a waste of time because you already know the notes. What you need to learn is the timing of the notes in the context of this piece. So that's my quick tangent on that. But oftentimes we do kind of go and just play through and fix the rhythm mistakes, fix the note mistakes, maybe try to do a little bit of dynamics here and there as we're just kind of working our way through the piece and generally getting familiar with it. And in general, that's not a very useful form of practice. However, there is a specific context where running through the piece like that can be very productive and very effective. When I use this in my practice is as a form of sort of retrieval practice, so seeing how well I can perform and be able to perform it and retrieve all the information from long-term memory so that I can put it into practice and make sure that when I'm on the stage, I'm able to play straight through. So after you've learned a piece and practiced a piece and feel pretty comfortable with it, running it through in performance mode is great to prepare for the performance, and it would be very advisable to practice starting at the top and playing straight through. And there's other ways that we can use this too earlier in the learning process besides just preparing for the final performance. What this might look like is even as I'm working on a small section, I'll say, okay, I'm going to look at this phrase and this is the phrase I'm working on. And I might start by doing kind of a performance mode run through of that phrase. And that will give me information about, okay, where do I need to work on it more deeply? Where can I not just retrieve the information from long-term memory and perform it comfortably and confidently as sort of a performance test? And you can look up this idea of the testing effect, which is a very well documented and well researched idea that we learn information best and we retain information best when we test ourselves on it. This comes up in academia a lot where they say, don't just read through the text and reread and reread and reread, but test yourself to see how well you can actually recall the information at a later time. So it's not just rereading the text, but asking yourself questions about the text and making sure that you have a good understanding of it. That's what performance mode practice is for us. So when you're looking at even a small section, you can start with a performance mode run through, testing it to see on my first run through of it without having warmed up to it or figured it out for today or worked it up in this practice session on a straight run through of it, how might it go, and test how it might go in a performance. And that will give you very valuable information for what you should work on and what you should focus on in that phrase that you don't have fully learned. Another example of seemingly bad practice advice that can actually be very effective is to play it with a different rhythm than what's written. And I already kind of went on my tangent about how important it is to do the right rhythm, and I'm kind of big into rhythm, and I'm always very picky with my students about doing the right rhythms. But there's a specific context where if you know the purpose behind it, it can actually be valuable to change the rhythm. And of course, I'm talking about practice rhythms or dotted rhythms, which a lot of people are familiar with as a practice technique, where you take an even run of 16th notes and instead of doing dee da 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 dum, you do dee ba da ba da ba da ba dum, and then flip that around, body 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 bum, or however the grouping might land when you do short, long, long, short, flip those around. Any combination of long and short notes. You can do long, long, short, 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 long, 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 short, short, long. Any combination of long and short notes, as long as you keep it consistent over the run, those are called practice rhythms. And practice rhythms where you actually do those different rhythms than what's written on the page can be very valuable for helping your brain to process all of the notes that are happening a little bit more deeply, to keep you mentally engaged in practice, because just doing doing that over and over gets really tedious and really boring. And once our brain kind of tunes out and isn't paying attention to what we're doing anymore, then the learning drastically slows down and we aren't going to retain that information nearly as well. So doing the dotted rhythms, where you have to think about that new rhythm and new pacing of the previously even run, makes your brain stay engaged and helps you to learn it more deeply and more clearly. So those kinds of things are specific contexts where typically bad practice advice can actually be very effective and very powerful. So the moral of the story for this video that I want you to take away is basically anything you do in practice, you can do anything. You can get really crazy. You can play while trying to do a handstand. I might not recommend that for clarinet. But you can do all kinds of crazy things, mixing notes up, playing in weird orders, running it straight through, running sections straight through, breaking it down to just doing 2 notes at a time. You can get infinitely creative with how you practice and what you do. However, you need to know why you're doing it. Doing any of those things at kind of the wrong time in practice won't be very effective. Getting a new piece and immediately starting by running straight through it probably won't be effective, unless it's in the context of you're practicing your sight reading and or it's an easy enough piece that you feel like you could probably sight read through it and play it really well, and you just want to see if there's any small sections that cause problems. So even that, there's contexts where it makes sense, but you have to be aware of the context for what you're doing. And when you have a good model of how learning works and how practicing and learning and developing a piece works, then you can see, I'm at this kind of phase of the practice process, and this kind of exercise is going to be effective here. And you can come up with things that work effectively and make sense to do in the context of where you're at in learning and practicing a piece. But if you aren't thinking about that context and you're just saying like, oh, I saw a video that said to do this, or somebody told me to do this practice strategy, that's not going to be effective for you unless you know why you're doing it and the purpose underneath it. So I hope that's helpful and gives you some food for thought. If you have any practice techniques that you're like, I feel like I've been told to do this, but I don't really know where in the practice process or in what context it would make sense to do that, let me know in the comments below and I'll give at least my idea of where that practice technique might be effective and how that works in the learning process. And thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know if you have any questions, as always, and I will see you in another video. And last but not least, a huge heartfelt thank you to the Dennersons. This is like the Quick Start Clarinet family who supports the channel and helps to make everything that I do possible. If you would like to support the channel and get some awesome rewards in return where we can work one-on-one over video and you can have my full support moving forward on your clarinet journey, then go to quickstartclarinet.com/supporter.